Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny, and this is Hyphenated, the podcast about living in the hyphen. And today, we're with Grasie Mercedes. You like how I said your name, Mercedes?
I do. So
That's
accurate.
my mom's first name.
Yes, I love it.
Gracie is a Dominican-American actress, writer, and producer from Brooklyn, and is now a series regular on the NBC comedy Grand Crew. Welcome, Gracie.
Yay, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. It's so funny because recently you have been blessing my timeline on Twitter, and there was so many good articles written about you and what you had to say about being Afro Latina in the industry and about Grand Crew. So obviously I started watching, and one of my friends is actually one of the head writers on the show, Iffy.
Oh, I love Iffy. That's amazing.
Let's rewind. How was it like growing up in a Dominican American household?
So I was born in Brooklyn. My parents were raised in Williamsburg. My mom came from DR pretty young. She was like 5 or 6, but my dad was like in his 20s. And they all kind of grew up in Williamsburg in New York. By the time I was old enough to know what the hell was going on in the world, we had moved to Borough Park. Which is also in Brooklyn. And then I went to high school in Manhattan. So I'm, born and raised in New York. I went to college in New York as well. Very Dominican household up until I was like 13. Then my stepfather since then is an Italian American. So then the household split. Yeah. Between two very strong ethnicities. So you know how that goes. But growing up younger, it was mostly me, my mom, my grandmother, and my aunt.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. My mom had me young. My mom had me as a teenager. And my aunt is 2 or 3 years younger than her. My grandmother is only 20 years older than my mom. So I was basically being raised by children. I was being raised by 3 Latina children. My mom was like 17. My grandmother was 37 and my aunt was like 14. Yeah. So it was a really fun household. Like I have really great memories of being like 5 or 6 years old and like putting on lipstick and dancing on the bed while like my aunt and my mom got ready to go out, and I was obviously stay home with my grandmother, but I thought I was going to go out with them. So
the fact that your grandma was like almost my age, like I'm 35.
Yeah. No, it's crazy.
I'm like still a child in my head.
Yeah.
To be like a real abuela.
Yeah. And when I see photos of them though, back then, I feel like they look older than they do now. Like it's crazy. Like something was in the water back then. They were they looked very mature and like, I don't know, I guess the 80s too, the style of the 80s
I think
and 90s
so.
Yeah.
Everyone just seemed older.
Totally.
So you stayed in New York for most of your life. How was school for you?
My mom worked her butt off and I always went to Catholic school growing up. So I went to 12 years of Catholic school.
Same.
Mainly because, you know, the New York public school system, I mean, I don't know if it's any better, but back then it was trash. And so to keep me out of trouble and to get me a good education, my mom just, you know, worked her butt off. And then when my stepfather came into the picture, he helped her, you know, continue that education for me, which I'm so grateful for. Yeah. So I always went to Catholic school, and everywhere I lived in Brooklyn was diverse in the sense that it was a lot of immigrant type families. So they were mostly either Latin families, Italian families. I lived in a lot of neighborhoods that had like a big Hasidic Jewish community, some Asian people. The crazy thing was I was not around a lot of African Americans. Anyone who was Black or of my complexion was usually Latino. But I never felt super, you know, like the only person of color in the room, because I definitely wasn't. Yeah. But I think in my Afro Latina-ness, you know, I definitely felt not Latina enough, and definitely not Black enough for the Black girls, not Spanish enough for the Latin girls. My Spanish always sucked. My mom always spoke to me in English. My grandmother spoke to me in Spanish. So I grew up understanding Spanish, but I would answer her in English.
It's very common.
Yeah. I mean, it's more common now, sadly, but yeah, my Spanish always sucked. So that always made me feel even more insecure about being Latina.
I get it. I've broken down many times in all Spanish interviews.
Oof, I could not.
Because that's when I realized that I'm not good at, I'm like, I can hold a conversation in Miami.
Right.
With my fellow Caribbean people.
Yes.
Okay, they know what the hell I'm saying. But when it's these big Spanish networks, it's very different Spanish.
Yes. And you know, in every different ethnicity within the Latin community, they speak a little differently. And they
oh my God.
Sayings and colloquialism. So it's tough.
Yeah, my friend who's staying over, he's half Cuban, half Peruvian. He was explaining to me that when he recently visited Peru, he went to like a smoothie shop and they were like, oh, tú quieres helado con tu smoothie. And helado to most people means ice cream.
Ice cream, yeah.
So he's like, no, helado in Peru means ice.
Oh.
but for us it's hielo. I'm like, why do
Right.
we do this
Yeah.
to ourselves?
Yeah.
Like, it's just it's
Yeah.
supposed to be one language, but we're like, you know what? I'm gonna this word is
There's
gonna mean something else.
Yeah, I didn't grow up around a lot of Mexican people, and then when I moved to Los Angeles, and someone Mexican was trying to talk to me in Spanish, I was like, I don't know what you're saying. Like, I just felt like I didn't know any Spanish. All of a sudden, I was like,
Right.
wait, what?
You just forgot everything you ever knew.
It's just it's different. I mean,
It,
yeah, yeah.
you
It
know?
was kind of a culture shock for me. I'm not gonna lie, because I think I didn't realize how few Dominicans and Puerto Ricans and Cubans are out here, and so you don't really get that Caribbean
No, you're
Latin
right.
community. I mean, now I'm meeting more people who are Dominican and stuff, but anytime I remember
Girl.
when I first started going on auditions, I would see so many women who looked like me, and I assumed they were Dominican or Puerto Rican, and they were all biracial, and I was like,
Oh, uh-huh.
okay, this makes sense. But it took me a while to adjust. I'm like, oh no, the Latino community here is very different than the Latino community in New York.
When I came out here, I started working at BuzzFeed, and when we created Pero Like, I was like,
Mm,
we need Afro Latinos up in here. And
yeah.
I realized how hard it was. I had to bring Gadiel over from San Diego. Like the one
Oh
Dominican.
wow.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And, but now I've started to meet a lot more Dominican, but it's every time I find, especially a Dominican person in LA,
We're
it's like,
unicorns.
oh, I'm like, I have to keep in touch with you because I don't run away. Don't go back to the East Coast, please.
Yeah, yeah.
I know you started touching upon that in the audition process, right? That you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, she's probably Dominican. And then you find out she's just
Mm-hmm.
mixed.
Yeah.
Like, when
Yep.
did you realize that you're like, damn, like, when am I going to see myself represented?
Yeah, I mean, I won't say I still haven't. I have, but it took a really long time. I mean, similarly, my high school was 95% Latina. Like, it was an all girls Catholic high school, and everyone was Puerto Rican, Dominican, pretty much. And then we had a few other people. And then I went to NYU, which is, super in the middle of the city. So you're around all kinds of people. And then I came out here to Los Angeles. And yeah, it was crazy. I'm not gonna lie. I was just like, I think it was a real culture shock. The first hardest thing I had to deal with was my hair. Like, I grew up going to Dominican hair salons and blowing out my hair every week. And when I first moved to Los Angeles, I could not find a Dominican hair salon. And then I
Oh,
started
man.
going to like a black hair salon. And though I am black but my hair is different than an African American girl's hair. And so, they were like frying my hair, and then I can't go to a white person because they don't know what to do with my hair, and they're super intimidated. So that was like my first thing. That was my first like challenge. And then I eventually, went natural and just chopped off all my hair and was like, okay, I guess I have to wear my hair curly and deal with it myself because no one can do my hair here. And then I finally found a Dominican hair salon, but I stopped straightening my hair.
Bless.
And then it was like the food. Like, I really missed my mom's Dominican cooking, and I couldn't really find that out here. But as far as work and acting goes, I was lucky that when I came out here, I started working pretty quickly in commercials.
Yeah.
And that was great. And I think commercially, it's very different. Like, when you go out for commercials, they love anything that's like other.
Yeah.
Like, anything that's like, is she black? Is she mixed? Is she that? Like, they love that. And so
Yeah.
I did well in that world. But then when I started going out for like TV film stuff, I realized, oh yeah, no one sees me as Latina. I can't go out for Latina. In about 13 years of acting, I think I went out for a Dominican role once, and that was like recently, about a year ago, for the Gordita Chronicles. Which
I
is,
knew it. I knew it was the Gordita.
Yeah, well, I think they auditioned every Afro Latina actress in the world. But then, ironically, and no shade to that show, because I'm very excited to see that show, and I freaking can't wait. And I love that it's about a Dominican family.
Yeah.
But the breakdown was for a dark skin Afro Latina for the mom, and then they end up casting a very light skin half Dominican person as the mom. And so it's just like, that's the frustration we always have to deal with, right? But even when they say they want that Afro Latina or Afro Latino, it's really done. I think the most recent example of it being done is with Love, and having Rome Flynn as one of the main guys on the show, which is beautiful, and he's Afro-Cuban.
Yeah.
So it's happening. It's starting to happen.
And Encanto. Have you
Encanto
seen
had
it?
the little, yes, that's the whole family.
I was like,
boy.
wow, we finally see Latinos in every shade.
And how funny that it's a cartoon. The
I know.
cartoon is like one of the first to show like the variety of color in one family. You know what I mean? Because like people don't understand that either. It's like,
No.
Latin families, like you can have a blonde hair, blue eyed person in one in the same family as a very dark skinned,
Yes.
dark hair person, and they're all in the
Yes.
same family, and that's normal.
When I moved over here, and I don't know if you went through something similar, but working at a digital media company, right, where it's like you're responsible for creating Latino content, and you're like, I can't just be putting out white Cuban shit, right? Because that's just my
Mm-hmm.
experience.
Yeah.
And it's like, coño, there's so many countries. Like, what about the Nicaraguans? What about the Ecuadorians? What about the Hondurans? We never hear about them anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
even I still always like to look out for all of the Caribbean because I don't like to just be like Puerto Rico and
Yeah.
Dominican. I was like, what about all my Haitian friends? The
Right.
hell? Like they never see themselves
Yeah.
represented. And so that was always something that I worried about. And coming out here, I also noticed within our community, not just with my coworkers, but with all the comments that I would have to read from our
Mm-hmm.
people, how little we understood of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a major problem.
Yeah, I mean it's really hard. I have spoken about this before. I think I speak about this a lot in my podcast, but it's one thing to get the racism and the colorism from white people or anyone outside of our race or ethnicity. It's
Hmm.
even worse to get it within our community. To
Yes.
be to hear the N word from people who are literally black and using that word. And it's just like I don't understand. And I feel like we need to call each other out. Like we need
Hmm.
to call out the colorism and racism that exists within the Latin community, because until we do that, until we take responsibilities for our own,
Yes.
why is any white person gonna see us any differently if we're
That's
not
the
even seeing ourselves differently?
I
So
know. I
yeah.
know. And that's why I'm so glad to see you, an Afro Latina Dominican woman, in a show like Grand Crew, because to me it's still like, oh my gosh, this is still fun. Like you must be feeling hella proud right now,
I mean, it is the
bro.
ultimate dream come true.
Yes. And your
Yeah,
character
no,
is so funny.
thank you. No, I love Faye. I mean, I deeply connected with her. It was literally like what they say, like the breakdown came in my inbox and I read a description and I was like, holy shit, this is me. And then, worked on the audition, and by the grace of God, I somehow got it because I know they auditioned a lot of people. And so it's crazy. And, at the end of the day, it was one of the first things I've ever auditioned for where I felt, and this is props to Phil Augusta Jackson, our creator and writer,
Hmm.
I felt like I could just bring who I was to this character. There was nothing in it that read like, quote unquote, be black or quote unquote, be urban or quote unquote, be this thing that is stereotypically always shown on television and you have to fit into that mold. I can just be me, which is, I'm kind of, silly and goofy and a little bit dorky, but also I'm just like, I don't know. I think I don't fit this like typical mold of the black woman you see on TV. And so I was so excited to like bring myself to this audition and do it. And, when I got it, I cried. I was just so,
Oh
so
my God.
happy.
Yeah.
And it's been a dream. The cast is incredible. The whole crew and the writing staff. I mean, from top to bottom, everyone is so talented, so lovely, so
Oh,
funny.
that's so good to
Like
hear.
I miss we wrapped in November. I'm like, please, please, let's get a second season. I just want to go back to work.
You want to see your family again. And
Yes, I miss everyone. I mean,
of
the
course.
cast, we see each other a good amount. Most of us live here in LA, but I still miss like everyone else. Like I miss our crew.
Claro.
Yeah.
So for those who haven't seen Grand Crew yet, can you talk to us a little bit about it and your character Faye?
Yeah, Grand Crew is a show about six friends, and they're kind of navigating through life and love, and they always what we call wind down at this wine bar. It's set in the east side of Los Angeles, which is another side, something else that I really loved about it because I'm an East Side girl. I feel like it's controversial to say that it's East LA because it's not East LA, but it's East part of LA. I mean, how do we describe it? East of Hollywood.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's east of Hollywood. So it's mostly takes place in like Los Feliz, Silver Lake, Echo Park, Highland Park, which are the areas that I only reside and go out in and stuff. And so that was another thing I connected to right
It's
away.
personal to you.
Yeah, and I don't think you see our these neighborhoods
No, you
represented on
don't.
TV. You know what I mean? It's
No.
always like Beverly Hills and West Hollywood and the Valley. I'm just like, no, there's another part that I love because it reminds me of New York. Actually, this part of town reminds me of New York more than
Ah.
any other part of town. in Los Angeles, it has more of that like vibe, you know, that like, you know, sometimes hipster, sometimes too hipster, but also just has more of a like down, like chill vibe.
There's very down
People,
to earth vibes in these
down to
areas.
earth,
It's
like
not Beverly Hills.
creatives. It's not like business people. It's not, it doesn't feel very like quote unquote Hollywood. It's a
No.
lot of creatives and actors and musicians and artists.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's what the show's about. And then my character Faye, she comes into, I was not in the pilot. They added the character Faye later on. And so I come in on episode 2. And I'm new to Los Angeles from New York. What are the odds?
Perfect.
And I joined the crew and become fast friends with Nicole and all the guys.
Your character's such a mystery. Like all these things that, and Nicole Byer, my God, like
the funniest woman on the planet.
How is it working with her specifically? Because you guys have great chemistry.
Thank you. I mean, I had to do a chemistry with her actually for as part of my audition, and it was over Zoom because of COVID.
Oh yeah.
And I just remember getting off of that Zoom and being like, well, that was the most fun I've ever had, and hopefully I get the job, because she was just such a delight and so lovely and so funny, and we just had such a great time. And yeah, we became fast friends on set for sure, like in real life. We hang out all the time, and sometimes it's just really hard not to laugh at her. Like it's just like I'm in the scene with her and I have to keep a straight face, and that might be the hardest part of my job sometimes. Between her and Carl, like it's just so hard to keep a straight face. I feel like me and Justin more than anybody are always like covering our mouths, just like, oh my God, I'm trying not to laugh at them because they're so funny right now.
Well, that's a blessing to be part of this cast that everyone makes each other laugh, like that's incredible.
Yeah, I feel so fortunate.
Yeah, and I know you were talking earlier about how one of the things you love about your character, aside from like you really relate to her because she's a lot like you. Like it's not about the stereotypical Black role, and I could say that for all the characters on the show, by the way. I'm like, they're all a bunch of dorks. Like they're so silly, and they're all so different, and one's a vegan, I'm a vegan, and I know what that's like being a Cuban vegan and like kind of being ostracized, and you're like, you're weird. And that's what being hyphenated is all about. It's like I can be a hardcore guanasa, and I have my Miami accent that slips out, and I love merengue and salsa and all that. Yes, Pitbull for life. But then hello, look at my wall. Like, I'm a geek. Look at your shirt.
Is that Galaga?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm wearing a Super Mario Brothers shirt. I was just speaking of Highland Park, I was just at Barcade like last weekend playing Galaga.
Hilarious. I love Galaga.
Yeah, it's a great game. But that's exactly right. I mean, I feel like now more than ever, there's such a stigma still, I think, in the Black community and the Latin community of like, if you do this, you're white, or if you talk white and you do this, and
what does that even
mean?
What
the fuck does that even mean? Well, man, I'm not sure. I'm supposed to curse. Can I curse?
Oh yeah, we curse. Me and Joanna are like the worst.
Okay,
we have
great.
Potty mouths.
But I'm like, what does that mean? What is that supposed to mean? And why do white people have a claim to this, that, and the other? And why can I enjoy these things as well and still be Dominican and still be Black and still be Afro Latina? Like, who made up these rules?
I don't know.
And so I think that's what's so special about our show, is that we don't play up to these, stereotypes of what Black people or people of color should like or do, or whatever the case may be. And our stories, they're just human stories. They're about people and friends. And I think anyone can watch the show and relate. I don't think it's just a Black show. Like, I don't think it's just for Black people. I think anyone can watch the show and laugh. Hopefully, I think number one, that's all anyone who is behind this show wants, is that people to tune in and feel good and laugh and relate and have a good time. Maybe drink a glass of wine while you're watching it.
It's definitely a feel-good show, and I laughed out loud many times per episode.
Oh, I love hearing that.
Yeah, because the chemistry between all of you, and then the writing, it just feels like it's a super great show, and I hope more people tune in. And like you're saying, these are all universal stories while still being specific. Because I'm sure you don't feel like nothing's being watered down here.
No, I think our last episode, episode 7, called Wine and Headlines, was a great example of that, where we tackle the fact, like, how do Black people deal with the headlines when we have a lot of shit in the news that's depressing and sad and unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
And so that episode just explored like 3 different ways of dealing with it. And it was really, I think it was one of our best episodes. We had a
Mm-hmm.
hilarious bit of, Carl Sherm on the show and Justin White on the show working out together, and that's how they deal with it, and making crazy noises while they work out. And then we had, Noah and Nikki, the brother and sister, and how do they help each other out? And they had like their boozy black brunch that they were getting drunk all day. And then we had me and Anthony / Aaron going on a hike and getting lost. And I don't give too much away, but
Yeah.
and we had this beautiful opening by Jay Ivey, this poet who did a poem and opened our show with this beautiful poem. And it just happened to be the first day of Black History Month too, which was also really cool.
That's really cool.
But I don't know. I think that was a really strong episode and a great example of like how to, touch upon Black issues and issues of the world, but also be universal and like, hey, how do we all deal with a bad day? And like, what do we do to make ourselves feel better?
Shows like this are so important because you are educating at the end of the day. Tu sabe, I think TV and film has such a massive, art in general, any form of art has such a massive responsibility because there's so many people. When I think about this country and how divided we are now, I'm like, there are people that have not left their hometowns. They don't travel. All they see the world through is their television set or their iPad, whatever it is, how people consume their content these days. And so that's why it matters so much to tell our stories and then there be multiples of it. Not just like, why should there just be one Black show, one Dominican show? Why can't there be 2 Dominican shows when there's like 30,000 white shows?
Right. And that is the most frustrating thing that we constantly have to be dealing with as being people in front of the camera and behind, as creators, and as to, I remember like I have a show that I created that I'm developing and is on pause right now because of Grand Crew. But beforehand, I remember when we had these meetings, and then deadline would come out and it'd be like, oh, Gordita Chronicles got picked up. And me being like, oh no.
See, and that shouldn't be.
Great for them, but that's a Dominican show. So now no one's going to take my Dominican show because that Dominican show's out there. And then realizing, oh my God, that's white supremacy working, right?
Yes.
Feeling this like, what we are competing against each other. It's like, well, why can't there be more than one Dominican show? Our shows are nothing alike, absolutely nothing alike. But that's how Hollywood thinks.
Yeah.
And I'm not wrong for being afraid that like, okay, well now HBO Max has this one Dominican show. They're not going to take my Dominican show.
Me, I feel the same way about Cuban shows. I'm like, oh no, and I'm like, because the Cuban shows that I want to sell are not at all like the Cuban shows that have been out there.
Exactly. And so we should not have to have that fear. But I feel like Hollywood needs to catch up and it like for real. I mean, I think it's getting better as far as Black shows right now. It's they're calling it Black Tuesday because we have Blackish, we have Grand Crew, we have Albert Elementary, we have Queens.
Shout out to Quinta.
We have Kings of Napa. I mean, we have a lot of Black-led shows on TV, on network television right now, which is beautiful. But I think we have like one Latin family, the show Promised Land on ABC.
Yep.
And it's like, that's one Latin family, lighter skinned Latin family. Great. I love that we have that. Could we have 10 more?
Have that show. Right. And then have 10 more. Y también give us more of a shot than just 1 or 2 seasons.
Yes.
It gets very complicated.
And that's, I think, across the board for all shows of all non-white shows. I think if it's a Black show, an Asian show, a Latin show, anything that's non-white, they love to pull out right away. Like, if you don't do great in that first season, that's it. That was your shot. You see, this is why we don't make these shows. They don't do well. It's like, well,
but they don't do that for white shows, because if there's a mediocre white show that doesn't get as many views in the first 2 seasons, they don't pull the plug on them so easily.
They give them a chance.
POC shows, they pull the plug. And if you think of shows like Schitt's Creek, which is one of my favorite shows.
Oh my God, such a great show.
But look how long it took for it to gain popularity.
So like 4 seasons?
Yes.
4 or 5 seasons?
So maybe? What would happen if they allowed shows of color to go beyond the second season, even though it might not be doing too great numbers wise, but what if you give them that chance and then it blows up and it be the next Schitt's Creek? It's not gonna I just think 2 seasons is not enough.
I mean, Schitt's Creek is a great example, but also like Brooklyn Nine-Nine didn't do well and got canceled on one network, and then NBC
Yes.
picked it up, and then look at it lasted for 8 seasons. So it's just like
Yes.
you need to give shows a chance, no matter who. I mean, I'm not saying like they should do the same thing to white shows. I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying like give white
Yes.
shows and black shows and black shows and all
Yes.
shows
Even
an
the playing
opportunity.
field.
Yeah, even the playing field,
Yes.
and give everyone an opportunity to grow a following, to have people fall in love with these characters. Because even us as actors in the writers' room as writers, like we're all working it out, right? We're all
Yes.
figuring out who these characters are and developing them together. And that takes a little time.
Yeah, and I think también that as Latinos, we need to support each other even when it's not an outwardly Latino show like your role in Grand Crew.
Yes, and Gloria Calderon Colette, shout out to Gloria, is amazing. And she reposted this article about me, Latino Rebels article.
Yes, that's the one I read.
Yeah, that says we should support Gracie Mercedes and Grand Crew.
Yeah.
And I was so touched because she retweeted it. A lot of people like saw it and
Yes.
retweeted it and stuff. And well, one, it made me like, it gave me chills. I'm like, oh my God, my Latin people are supporting me. Like, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, it's like, yeah, this isn't a Latin show. And
Yeah.
we, you know, if we get a second season, we talked about the fact that at some point we will mention that Faye is Afro Latina, which is
Oh,
great.
good. I was
We
about to
can
ask you that.
Yeah, I mean, Phil has been asked this question apparently multiple times. Like he gets the question like, so why did you decide to go with an Afro Latina for Faye? And he was like, I didn't know she was Afro Latina. He's like,
She was just good.
She's just black and good. And I was like, let's go. And so I was like, well, yes, great. I love that I was hired for my talents or for something he saw in me rather than what I am, quote unquote. But then we did talk about it, and I was like, yeah, I would love that. And he was like, yeah, as long as you are cool with like letting me in on your experience, because obviously he doesn't know that experience.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I'm an open book. I'll tell you anything you want to know. And so, you know, if we get a second season, hopefully there can be some kind of exploration of Faye's Afro Latinidad. Maybe she has a family member come visit, or whatever whatever the case may be.
Her abuela.
Yes, yeah, I'm like, I already had story ideas to pitch.
What are because you have staff writing experience too, no?
Yeah, so I was a staff writer on another NBC show called Perfect Harmony, and that was so fun. That was in 2019.
Oh wow, that was not long ago.
No, it was right before COVID. We literally, I think we wrapped November 2019. It starred Bradley Whitford and Anna Camp and a bunch of other really funny, talented actors. It was another dream situation. Like, I don't know, I'm having a lot of luck with NBC, but that writer's room was really a pleasure to work in. And I learned so much. I actually learned so much about writing, but I also learned a lot about acting because I got to go on set all the time and get like a master class from Bradley Whitford, which was incredible.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was really amazing. And, you know, I love writing. I'm writing some stuff right now. I'm working on some stuff right now. I'm writing my first feature and I'm still developing a couple of projects. So
amazing.
I hope to, you know, be part of the narrative.
You are needed.
You know, thank you. Thank you. I definitely want more stories about women and more stories about Afro Latinas. And so I'm going to help in any way I can.
I am thrilled for you, Gracie.
Thank you.
You have no idea. I'm so glad that not only are you an incredibly talented actress, but you're also a writer and you're probably going to direct and produce and do all those things también.
Yes, I've directed some short films, but I definitely want to get into TV directing as well. And we'll hopefully, maybe if Grand Crew gets to go on forever and ever, I'll get to eventually direct an episode.
Manifest, because it's going to happen. And so many Afro-Latina Dominican women are going to look up to you so much, even more so, because not everyone knows, right? Like some people have no idea. They're like, oh, okay. And they find out and they're like, oh my God, she is me. And that just makes such a big difference. Like, again, going back to Encanto, like the photos of the little kids that look like the characters, like standing by the TV. And I'm just like,
yeah, I mean, growing up, I related to, like, I watch a ton of TV, and I remember seeing Lisa Turtle on Saved by the Bell and being like, oh, she looks like me, and then seeing oh my God, what is her name on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air?
Ashley Banks,
Tatiana Ali, and being like, oh, and now knowing that she's Cuban, right? Isn't she like, or Panamanian?
Panamanian, I think. Yeah.
I'm like, God, I wish I would have known when I was younger that she was Latina,
right?
But yeah, I think it's a cool thing.
It's very cool. Bueno, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to be on our podcast. I'm sure so many people are going to be inspired. And if you want to give any last info on Grand Crew and when people can tune in.
Yeah, so people right now can watch the first 7 episodes of Grand Crew on Hulu or Peacock. We're right now on hiatus for the Olympics, but we air again on February 22nd. Our finale is March 8th, and then you can watch anytime on Hulu or Peacock. But for those last 3 episodes, Tuesday night at 8:30 on NBC.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Gracie.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, girl.
Bye.